UFC Fight Night, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Welcome to another fight card prediction by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris. As usual, we're giving you fight-by-fight breakdowns, fight-by-fight analysis from that betting perspective specifically. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to the Boxing MMA Picks YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video as well. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night card on ABC, we have 12 fights in total, 6 of them on the prelims, 6 of them on the main card. So let's get started right away with fight number 1 of the prelims. We have Jessica Penne versus the newcomer Emily Ducote. Jessica Penne, she's on a 2-fight win streak. She beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz back in August. 39 years old, so I mean, definitely a veteran in the sport. She's a long fighter. She uses her reach. She's going to have 3 inches in reach, 3 inches in height as well. Her striking has looked a little bit more improved since her return from a hiatus in 2021. It's been looking a little bit more fluid. She's been having a bit more better combinations. A bit quicker with her striking. She has a solid long jab. She presents a Muay Thai type of style. Fairly average level of stand-up, though, I will say. Definitely serviceable at this point, though, whereas beforehand I would have said it was below average. Has a solid clinch. She averages a takedown and a half per fight to go along with that. Very tricky grappler, though. That's one of her biggest strengths. She's a very tricky grappler. She has a BJJ black belt, very crafty on top as well. She can definitely land that submission if you're not careful. Emily Ducote is making her UFC debut. She's coming from Invicta. She's on a 3-fight win streak over there. She last competed in May, so fairly recently. Pretty patient on the feet, active jab. She has clean boxing from what I've seen, clean combinations. Decent calf kicks will be included in her otherwise boxing approach to her stand-up. She has good footwork to go along with it. She has good timing. She has good counterpunching as well. It looks like she prefers a more technical style of matchup. She might not be the best at handling pressure from what I've seen in moments in some of her fights. Very much a stand-up artist, though. I have seen her land takedowns, plus she does have a number of submission wins to her resume. And she has an active ground and pound. So that is something to note. But like I said, very much a stand-up fighter from what I've seen. I think Ducote, has good stand-up that will translate well to the UFC. I'm just not quite sold on Ducote as a prospect quite yet. I don't consider her striking to be dangerous necessarily. I think it's effective, but I don't quite think it's dangerous. To be fair, we have seen her drop girls, but just again, I wouldn't consider that style to be dangerous. She's not the best at handling pressure, like I mentioned, and that tells me that the veteran in Jessica Penne has a few key things that she can take advantage of. We've seen Ducote beat grapplers in Invicta, but I think the difference here is what Penne has shown me in terms of her striking improvements, as well as the winning streak that she's on. I think that she feels that she can maybe make one last run up the rankings. UFC seems to favor her in terms of maybe giving her that final push. And she does have an opponent in Emily Ducote that she can potentially be successful with if she game plans to her strengths and if she game plans to her experience. I know she's the underdog here. I think that's for a reason. I think Emily Ducote clearly has the better stand-up. And Jessica Penne is not an expert wrestler, but I think the veteran, the veteran craftiness that Penne could provide, I think the pressure that Penne could provide, I think the improvements to her stand-up to at least be serviceable and to try to find her way to the ground, I think are some key things that Penne could take advantage of and possibly pull this one out. So I'm going to start fight number 1, going with the underdog.
Yeah, that was a good fight. Penne's getting up there, man. She's 39. The Godinez fight, I thought she lost that fight. So arguably she's really 1 in 5, like whatever that record really is. She didn't win that fight against Godinez and Godinez's debut, right? So I like Ducote in this spot. I like the dog in her. She likes it. She dictates the fight where it goes. She's going to be on the front foot. She's going to be in her face. Just avoid the grappling, and I think she can. And I think she'll have enough to get a decision here in this spot. So I like Ducote here to come in, get the win, 28 versus 39. I think age is a factor in this fight. Ducote puts on a pace. She has good cardio. And I think she's going to avoid the grappling, avoid the takedowns, and she's going to shine in the striking.
Second fight, prelims, we have Dwight Grant taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Dwight Grant's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Sergey Kazanko back in April. Very explosive, I should say. His movement is somewhat awkward, kind of throws punches at unique angles, puts a lot of jabs out there, tries to find the timing, tries to find the spacing. He does still swing pretty wildly, though, trying to land those haymakers. That ends up leaving him open. And on top of that, too many moments where the hands maybe aren't active enough. He does use his reach to his advantage, though. Only 1 inch on paper, but he has very long arms here and definitely uses that. Doesn't really offer much of a ground game. He also might have some cardio concerns. So there are some legitimate concerns in terms of siding with Dwight Grant. But he's going up against an opponent who has some questions in and of himself, and Dustin Stoltzfus, who's on a 3-fight losing streak at this point. He lost to Gerald Meerschaert back in December. Just a fairly basic style, fairly basic stand-up, albeit serviceable. He does have a steady pace about him. He can put some punches together. The jab hand does stay active. He does include fakes, does a lot of posting with that jab hand. In terms of the takedown numbers, 1.7 takedowns per. And especially in his last fight, he showed that he's willing to attempt those takedowns. I wouldn't necessarily call him a great wrestler, but again, he will diversify his approach to attempt those takedowns. He can also maintain top control with decent positioning and some ground and pound to go along with it. Only 46% takedown defense, though, which could play a factor in this fight. I don't think it does too much. Maybe a bit too comfortable off of his back. He does have good defensive grappling. I have seen him scramble, get back to the feet. But again, that's something, if he is taken down, Dwight Grant could have a few moments of top control there. But overall, just a low-level fight overall, in my opinion here. But the way that I'm seeing it, Dwight Grant, just hasn't quite translated into the UFC yet. I can't quite say the same for Stoltzfus either, but I think Stoltzfus is maybe just a bit more reliable at this point. I think his striking is a little bit cleaner. Not to say it's better, but I do think it's a little bit cleaner. And I think he can capitalize on what's a weak ground game on the side of Dwight Grant. Like I said, Stoltzfus, he has shown me in his past couple fights going for that takedown. This might be one of those fights where whoever loses gets cut. And I just don't quite see Dwight Grant as a UFC caliber fighter. I think Dustin Stoltzfus maybe is a borderline UFC fighter, but Dwight Grant, I just don't quite see him as one overall. I know he's the favorite on this one, but I think Dustin Stoltzfus as the underdog is actually the more reliable pick. That said, Dwight Grant, of course, could very much hurt him on the feet. But I'm going to go with a fighter that I think is a bit more reliable in what is otherwise a low-level fight, in my opinion. And that more reliable fighter is going to be Dustin Stoltzfus.
Yeah, man, this is a good one to kick off the second fight of the event here. Dwight Grant, I'll be honest, he's pretty good. He just makes some mistakes. He doesn't have the best cardio, as you mentioned. But in this fight, he's going to be going up to the 185-pound division. So he's going to be able to have a smaller weight cut. So he should look better. He should look better. And the middleweight division is not as competitive as the welterweight division, in my opinion. And as far as belonging in the UFC, Dustin Stoltzfus, he hasn't impressed me at all. And he has no wins in the UFC. He doesn't even have a single win. So I'm not even sure if he belongs. But we look at Dwight Grant, he has at least 3 wins in the UFC. Arguably, he won. The Trinaldo fight was close, right? So, and the Sergey Kandosko fight, He was winning that fight because I bet Sergey, and I was worried until Sergey landed that Sergey landed that bomb in that fight. So in this fight, I actually think that Dwight Grant's going to be able to keep it on the feet here. I think that Dustin Stoltzfus doesn't keep a pace high enough to wear out the cardio of Dwight Grant. And I think Dwight Grant's striking is going to be better. I just think he's dealt with better fighters. Not better fighters, but he was in a harder division. He has some wins in the UFC. And I think he gets it done here in a new weight class.
All right, let's move on to the third fight. We have Dustin Jacoby taking on Jung. Dustin Jacoby unanimous decision win over Miesha back in March. He's on an 8-fight win streak now at this point. A pretty complete, methodical striker, pretty good boxer, pretty good kickboxer as well. He's going to chip away with those kicks, great accuracy with the hands. He has good movement, good counter punching as well. Calf kick has definitely given some opponents problems, and got to respect what he's coming with from a power perspective. 10 of his 17 wins are via KO, TKO, but it's not quite that one-shot kill, but rather it's accuracy, it's accumulation, it's speed, it's combinations. So, look for him to be able to amount and put that striking together in very effective ways. Jung, we saw in his last fight, he kind of did the same thing. He beat Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I think it was standing elbows that had ended that fight. That was back in November. Skill-wise, I do like what I see from him. He's pretty patient in the stand-up, good hands. He's more of a boxer in there than anything else. He cuts the ring off pretty well. He has good fakes and feints, good in and out movement. And I mean, we saw him take the fight to the ground in terms of that William Knight fight. The numbers, 2.6 takedowns per, little deceiving. I'll get to that in a moment. But again, we saw what he could do, at least versus somebody who didn't have the best takedown defense in William Knight. I think this is a good, tough matchup here. I think that on paper, Jung might check a bit more boxes here. We know his striking is there, as is Jacoby's, of course. But we also know for Jung, the takedown numbers are there. But like I said, little bit deceiving. We got to be careful with those on paper numbers. Although he averages 2.6 takedowns per, that's coming from landing 8 takedowns versus William Knight. Outside of that fight, he actually doesn't have any takedowns in his other 4 UFC fights. So very much a fighter that's going to keep it on the feet. And that said, I think it's going to be a striking match. Jung is a good boxer, like I mentioned, but I think Jacoby is a really good kickboxer. And in an MMA fight, I'm almost always going to like the kickboxer versus the boxer, since the kickboxer's attack is a bit more diverse. You add in that calf kick that I can see Jacoby using. Again, add in the fact that I just think that Jacoby is simply at a higher level as a striker specifically. And my pick is going to land on Jacoby as a result. This is a good, tough fight, though. Definitely going to pay attention to how this looks during the face-off. I'm really paying attention to this one. I'm paying attention to how the line swings on this one. But as of right now, I do like Dustin Jacoby in this spot. He's going to be my pick.
Yeah, I was swinging back and forth on this one. This is going to be a good fight. We know Jacoby is going to have the kicking advantage, the leg kicks. The boxing, I'm giving that advantage to Jung. I'm giving the wrestling advantage to Jung. But the overall striking, the combination with the kicks and the punching, you got to give Dustin Jacoby that edge there. So he will have a slight striking advantage in this fight. But as far as overall MMA goes, Jung has that wrestling, so he kind of rounds out better. Jung has the power in this fight. Out of the two, he has more power. If someone's going to get hurt, Jung has that power to do it. I'm going to go with the underdog in this spot here. I just think that Jung can kind of rely on the clinching, holding him against the cage, getting some takedowns. And as far as the striking goes, I think Jung can keep it close. He can keep it close. So I'm going to go Jung here to get it done here, continue his wins in the UFC, and stay undefeated in the UFC.
Fight number 4, we have Bill Algeo versus Herbert Burns. We see Algeo coming in as a sizable favorite, -200. Herbert Burns as the underdog, +170. Bill Algeo beat Joe Anderson Brito. That was back in January. He's a pretty tall fighter for the division. We see he's going to have 4 inches in height in this one. The reaches are the same for this fight, though. But he's a tall fighter with long kicks, right? So taller fighter, still going to have a reach advantage despite the arm length. Bit of a leg heavy attack stylistically. He's pretty relaxed on the feet. He's pretty light on the feet. He does switch stance often. And in general, he does have decent fluent combinations. He keeps his hands down defensively. That will cost him at times. And one thing you really want to highlight for this fight specifically, just 55% takedown defense. For example, Ricardo Ramos took him down 8 times. That was 2 fights ago. He was also taken down twice in his last fight by Joe Anderson Brito. So someone that just doesn't have the best takedown defense. Cardio also could be a concern. It definitely slows down throughout the fight, kind of loses some of that pace on his offense, some of that in and out on his offense, some of the agility that he has on offense. That's sort of primarily what he loses once he starts to gas out. Going up against Herbert Burns, who hasn't competed since August 2020. He lost to Daniel Pineda at that time. Pretty relaxed in the stand-up. I wouldn't say his striking is high level. Maybe serviceable at best, Muay Thai type of style. He does actively try to take the fight to the ground. 5 takedowns in 4 UFC fights. And it comes with high-level grappling as well. If he's taken down, I think he plays sort of full guard jiu-jitsu a bit too often, and that definitely will give his opponent an opportunity for some ground control time. The way that I'm seeing this is striker versus grappler. Striker, of course, in Bill Algeo versus grappler in Herbert Burns. And what I'm thinking about is Algeo had some problems in his last fight dealing with a fighter in Joe Anderson Brito who used a lot of clinch and a lot of continued coming forward. Although Burns isn't as explosive as Joe Anderson Brito, I think Burns can implement that sort of similar come forward / clinch / look for takedowns type of approach. And I think that approach will wear them both out in terms of cardio. And this one really should just be about who has more heart, which is sort of impossible for me to tell. But that said, keeping it analytical, Algeo's takedown defense, again, it's telling for me at 55%. He's had 5 UFC fights, and in each of them, he's been taken down at least twice. So that tells me that Burns should not have an issue bringing this fight to the ground. I think Burns could potentially submit Algeo here. That wouldn't surprise me. But outside of a submission finish, what I'm potentially thinking happens here is Herbert Burns wins 2 rounds by having some ground control, by getting the takedown, by potentially attempting some submissions, and both guys kind of being too gassed to make a real difference in the 3rd round. So I'm going with another underdog, Herbert Burns, on this one. Some really tricky fights to start this card out, but I'm going with the underdog, Herbert Burns.
Yeah, this is a good one here because Herbert Burns can easily come out here, get some takedowns, get some ground control, get a submission in the early goings in this fight. But Herbert Burns, his cardio is not good. He showed in that Pineda fight, he gassed out. And against Algeo, that's not going to work out. I think Herbert Burns can come out, get the takedowns early. Algeo's a black belt as well, so he's going to be able to avoid the submission, right? Ultimately, right? And as the fight goes on, just like that Brito fight, as the fight goes on, Burns is going to tire out just like Brito. And then Algeo's going to be able to outstrike him. So I like Algeo in this spot here, coming on into the 2nd round, 3rd round, win the later 2 rounds in the fight after Herbert Burns gasses out, can't get no more takedowns. And Algeo just going to kind of apply the pressure here with the output. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo to get the win here.
All right, fight number 5. In that case, Ricky Simón versus Jack Shore. A great bantamweight fight here. 2 of my favorite fighters in the division. Ricky Simón's on a 4-fight winning streak after he beat Rafael Assunção back in December. Pretty complete fighter at this point with good wrestling. He's usually controlled, usually controlling, I should say, the center of the octagon. He's usually coming forward. He cuts the ring off pretty well. throws a lot of pop in his punches. I think the boxing is pretty clean at this point. You know, a lot of takedown attempts, good top control, good chain wrestling. He has that grinded out type of wrestling, and his cardio just, you know, simply doesn't give up with that approach that he has. You know, definitely a lot to like about him. But a lot of the same thing can be said about Jack Shore, who beat Timur Valiev back in March. He also is a relentless wrestling type of fighter. He has really good entries, good takedowns. He's good on top. He has good positioning. He'll chain wrestle as well. He'll look for and he'll land a rear naked choke. 7 of his 16 wins are via rear naked choke. So it's a bit of a specialty that he has. The stand-up is more than serviceable. He does fight well coming forward. The jab is good. He has good in and out movement. He has a decent calf kick to go along with it. But most importantly, he's pretty patient, pretty composed. To me, this is probably the toughest matchup of the card because, again, they have very similar strengths. You know, they're both good at implementing their game plan on their opponents as well. Both of them are relentless wrestlers. Both of them have good stand-up. Both of them have good takedown defense, which is very important. I think Jack Shore's stand-up maybe slightly better or more diverse, at least. And I really do think that their wrestling is just as good as each other. I think they'll both land takedowns on one another. I don't anticipate either of them slowing down throughout the fight. This fight to me is pretty 50-50 in a lot of ways. But my gut wants to side with Jack Shore for one particular reason. And the reason is that Ricky Simón, you know, on a 4-fight win streak, of course, but he hasn't really faced anyone with the size of Jack Shore, probably since his Rob Font fight back in 2019. That also happens to be the last time he lost. So you look at sort of the 4 fights that he's had, you know, since the Rob Font fight, and it's just been fighters that he's bigger than. Ray Borg, we know, is not the biggest. Brian Kelleher, we know, is not the biggest. The Sun Sao, Gaetano Perello. These are all guys that he is bigger than. And then he went up against Rob Font, different style of fighter, but nonetheless, Rob Font was the bigger man in the ring. You know, I think Jack Shore's size advantages will ultimately be the deciding factor in this fight. And, you know, if for nothing else, then the fact that it's a different look than what Simón has seen over his last 4 fights. So, I mean, I like Jack Shore in this spot. I think size will play a role. Otherwise, you're looking at similar wrestling, slight striking advantage, in my opinion, for Jack Shore. And again, just the bigger guy, potentially the more physically daunting guy, able to sort of implement his wrestling a little bit more than Ricky Simón would be able to do. But good fight, close fight, tough fight. I'd be careful with sort of running away with betting on this one. But again, I do like Jack Shore in this spot.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best fights on the card. This should be main event. Not main event. This should be the co-main event of this card here. Jack Shore, really good fighter, really good win in his last fight. I don't think he's going to win this one, though, man. I think Ricky Simón gets him. I think when it comes to these guys, I know you mentioned the size. I just think Ricky Simón is just much stronger. And he's just going to keep pushing that pace for 3 rounds. Albeit Jack Shore has good cardio. It's just Ricky Simón, he has a relentless pace style that he can push throughout the fight. He was only Merab has really dealt with it when they fought. But yeah, I think he's going to push that pace. I think he's going to have the strength. He's going to be the much stronger guy in this fight when they clinch up. He should have he's going to be stronger than this guy. I think he's going to be able to push him around. And Jack Shore has the striking advantage. I'll give you that. Ricky Simón, though, is definitely improving his striking. But I just think the grappling, I think the pace, the pressure. Jack Shore has good grappling, good wrestling, but I think Ricky Simón's gonna take him down repeatedly. I really think so. And if you look at Instagram, go on their pages. Jack Shore looks like regular Jack Shore, but Ricky Simón, the guy looks jacked. The guy looks super jacked. Okay, and he's standing next to his nutritionist. And listen, he's taking this serious, right? He's taking this fight real serious, right? So I like Ricky Simón here. 3 rounds of relentless wrestling. I'm going to go with the underdog.
Fight number 6, final fight of the prelims. We have Punahele Soriano versus Dalcha Lungiambula. Soriano's on a 2-fight losing streak after losing a split decision to Nick Maximov. That was back in February. He's a southpaw. He has a lot of pop in that left hand, especially as a counter puncher. It's probably his favorite punch. Has heavy hands in general, good looping punches, good combinations. There are times where he overextends and misses big. So, be careful there, especially going up against Dalcha Lungiambula. He is a good wrestler. We saw it on Dana White Contender Series. We saw it a lot in his last fight in terms of wrestling know-how. He was taken down repeatedly by Nick Maximov, but I think he showed kind of his IQ in that fight in terms of wrestling exchanges. He's also a state champion wrestler. So, although he likes to keep the fight standing, we know that he has wrestling in his back pocket should that ever be called upon. Going back to his stand-up, he does like to come forward on the feet as well. His cardio was something that I questioned before his last fight. He still showed signs of it slowing down after his last fight, but it was 3 rounds of relentless wrestling, so it is sort of understandable. But nonetheless, something you want to watch for with him. Something you also want to watch for with Dalcha Lungiambula, who lost to Cody Brundage back in March, who's on a 2-fight losing streak as well. Lungiambula is patient on the feet. He's almost a hesitant striker. He has a judo background, so not necessarily a wrestling background, but he will show some explosive wrestling and takedowns. And again, judo to his advantage. Of course, we know clinch situations could turn into takedown situations when you have that judo background. He will try to clinch against the cage to that point. He'll kind of use the physical strengths that he has. He does have explosive bursts on the feet at times. He puts his all into his punches. And again, just with his physique, with his style, with the way he throws everything into his punches, I mentioned it off the top, but cardio is a potential issue for Dalcha Lungiambula as well. I'll keep the prediction part of it short. I like Soriano here as the better striker. I think they both swing big. I think they can both land a fight-changing punch on each other. So very much puncher's chance on both sides. But outside of a puncher's chance, I feel like Soriano has the ability to be a bit more cleaner, a bit more calculated, and a bit more technical in their striking exchanges. Again, they both have cardio concerns, but I do trust Punahele Soriano's tank a little bit more as well. So Punahele Soriano is going to be my pick to get it done, to snap his 2-fight losing streak. This was a fighter that was undefeated before this losing streak, and I think he gets back into the win column.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that as well. Punahele Soriano. This fight, I think he's going to have the cleaner striking in this fight. Both have cardio issues, of course, but anyone can win this. So I wouldn't bet this fight because it could be a matter of who lands that big blow. Both these guys can have a lot of power in their strikes, so it could be a matter of who lands first. But again, Soriano has never been knocked out, and he should be able to bank 2 rounds. He might even get a knockout. This guy has serious power in this division, so I'm going to go Soriano to get it done. But at these odds, I can't fathom to bet Soriano at these high odds. So I'm going to avoid betting, but Soriano's the pick.
Let's move on to the main card, and let's move on to the first fight of the main card. We have Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate. Lauren Murphy, she last challenged for the title. She lost to Valentina Shevchenko back in September. She probably most closely identifies as a boxer in terms of her style of stand-up. She comes forward in the stand-up. I wouldn't consider her a high-level striker necessarily, but again, the boxing is solid. She picks her shots well. She's patient. She cuts the ring off well. She has a decent jab. She uses her jab to sort of set things up. Decent striking defense to go along with it. She can sort of load up and engage in those combinations as well. She is physically strong, but her takedown defense is just 65%. It's going to be super important for this fight going up against Miesha Tate, who the UFC is definitely trying to push a resurgence story for. She lost to Ketlin Vieira back in November. She did show that kind of improved striking in her last fight, especially compared to who she was as a striker. I still consider her very much a basic striker with her style, but a little bit more effective with it. Doesn't make as many mistakes as she once used to. Her timing looks a bit improved. Her striking defense looks a bit improved as well. But we know that with Miesha Tate, her strengths are still very much her strengths. She's a good grappler. She's a really good wrestler to go along with it. She has good takedowns, almost 2 takedowns per fight. Good top control, good positioning as well. Ultimately, I think this is a perfect matchup for Miesha Tate in that although Murphy has the better stand-up, I don't think Lauren Murphy has an overwhelmingly dangerous style of stand-up. Tate should be able to hold her own enough on the feet in order to implement those takedowns. I think she'll be successful with the takedowns. This is a 3-round setting. Again, Lauren Murphy's takedown defense just 65%. I think Valentina Shevchenko took her down maybe 2 or 3 times in their fight. And I think, again, in this 3-round setting, there's enough for Miesha Tate to control her for at least 2 rounds. So I think Miesha Tate will get the job done, sort of finally get over the hump, get that W under her name. And I think Lauren Murphy is still ranked pretty high. So I wonder where that puts Miesha Tate after this one. But Miesha Tate is going to be my pick to get it done.
Yeah, Miesha Tate probably wins the fight here, man. But I can't buy into Miesha Tate yet. Just like her last fight against the Brazilian, I was all on the Brazilian side. I was not feeling Miesha Tate. She took a long time away from fighting, so those years she took away, you can't just come back in and just start beating contenders, right? So she already got her first loss, and I think I'm gonna have to go with the underdog in this spot here because I'm not sure what Miesha has yet. I got to see her beat someone over at least 3 rounds. I got to see a full out good game plan. I got to see everything for me to think that she's back. Lauren Murphy is not a scrub. She can beat Miesha Tate standing. Miesha will have the grappling advantage, but don't be surprised if Lauren Murphy comes out stronger and she's able to just overpower her in certain clinching or grappling exchanges. And Lauren might get some takedowns. So she rounded out her game here. I'm going to go with the underdog, Lauren Murphy. Keep it on the feet. Even if you get taken down first round, come back second, third round, takedowns will be harder. And Lauren Murphy, I think striking her forward, being on the front foot is going to help her win this fight. So I'm going to go Lauren Murphy to get it done.
Moving on to the second fight of the main card, a fun one at that. We have Shane Burgos versus Charles Jourdain. Shane Burgos beat Billy Quarantillo back in his last fight in November. Likes to come forward, good pressure, really trusts his hands. He has really good boxing, high-level striker, likes to engage, not really the most elusive defensively. He does have a lot of head movement, but he is still somebody who sort of, likes to hit hard and get hit hard and sort of see who survives. Has excellent takedown defense, so very much has the opportunity to keep fights on the feet. His fights are very highly likely to remain standing. Charles Jourdain, very much the same thing. He's on a 2-fight win streak in terms of keeping it standing, I should say. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Lando Venata back in April. He's a really dynamic striker. As a southpaw, he will switch stance as well. He has some good pop, good explosiveness. 13 wins, 8 of them are via KO, TKO. Added another 4 via submission. He's definitely somebody who is a finisher, good counter striker, good calf kick as well. He's a high action fighter, good forward pressure, good cardio as well. Important to note, this fight is taking place in New York. Shane Burgos is from New York, so he'll definitely have that hometown support. That also tells me that he's gonna want to stand there and bang even more than he normally does, which is saying a lot. I think this fight would truly be about who catches who first. I can't see this fight distance. I think both guys like to bang. I think both guys are tough. Both guys are hard, cardio as well. And both guys are willing to excite the fans. For this fight, I'm really just relying on level of competition here. I think Shane Burgos has gone up against the better guys and sort of went to war with them, whereas I think it's a big step up in competition for Charles Jourdain. Jourdain technically has the more diverse striking, maybe the better movement as well. But like I said, I think both guys are going to want to stand and bang. I think both guys can hurt each other and in a coin flip type of fight, my coin is going to land on Shane Burgos to pull through, not only behind a hometown crowd, but also as the fighter with, a long reach advantage in 6 inches, 2 inches in height, and just more physically daunting for this featherweight division. For two guys that are going to stand there and bang, the guy that's more physically daunting, I think, is going to get the job done in his hometown. Shane Burgos is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is tough, man. Because if you watch that Andre Ewell fight versus Jourdain, this guy's dangerous, man. He changed there. He changed. If you watch that fight, pull it up, watch the fight, and you'll see this guy has some killer in him. And it's a tough fight. But again, you got to look at this guy's lost to Julian Erosa, Andre Fili, Des Green, but he was again fighting in a weight class up. It wasn't his weight class, so I'm not going to count that. But when you look at those are his losses. When you look at Shane Burgos, he only loses to killers, like heavy-handed strikers like Josh Emmett, Calvin Kattar, and Edson Barboza. So I like Shane Burgos in this spot here. I just think he's overall the better striker. You're going to be marching him down. He's going to be the bigger guy in this fight. One thing I've seen with Charles Jourdain, he can get a lot of power. He can put a lot of power in his shots, but he puts a lot of action to it versus Shane Burgos can get the same power with little action. Like he's in your face, he's popping, he's countering. Really good boxer at the UFC for the UFC level. So I like Shane Burgos in this spot. I'm not sure Charles is ready yet to beat a guy like Shane Burgos, a guy that they both don't have the best defense, so they're both going to take shots. And I just think Shane Burgos is more prepared for the war. So I'm going to go Shane Burgos here to get it done, heavier shots, and I could see him even putting him away in this fight.
Third fight of the main card, Matt Schnell versus Sumudaerji. For Matt Schnell, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Brandon Royval back in May. Pretty methodical in the stand-up. He kind of lulls you to sleep. Then he's going to look to attack. Quick hands, accurate hands, good combinations, especially coming off of different counter-punching situations. He's a very efficient striker. He has good movement in the ring as well. He came out a lot more aggressive in his last fight versus Royval. I know I was sort of criticizing Matt Schnell for putting on a bit of a sparring pace at times, but he was coming forward in that fight. He did show me more activity in that fight. He even dropped Brandon Royval. So, very capable striker. And again, he showed that he can sort of take that type of approach, that more attacking style approach, rather than that sort of sparring pace that we've seen from him lately. So just good overall striker. Sumudaerji, 3-fight win streak, although it's been over a year and a half since he last competed. He beat Zarukadashev back in January 2021. He's a southpaw. He's light on the feet, high IQ. He's a pretty diverse striker as well. He's got a really good jab. He's a good counter striker. Good speed on the feet, good takedown defense to go along with it. I don't think that'll be relevant in this fight. Also really good striking defense, especially with that footwork and timing that he has. I think we're looking at two fighters with really similar strengths. I think this is another tough fight to call on this card, if you can't tell the theme by now, for this entire card. This fight should stay on the feet, but this is, again, it's sort of a common theme that I've mentioned over the last maybe 3 weeks or so. Another one of those fights for me where I can say the underdog is more than game, right? The underdog Matt Schnell on paper has a lot of value because, he's a very capable fighter. But I think the favorite is just a level above. No one has been able to beat Sumudaerji with striking before. All 4 of his losses have come via submission. And again, I think he's the more dynamic striker than Matt Schnell. He might have maybe more of a reach advantage than what's stated on paper. I know he's a really long fighter that fights really long. He's, sort of more consistent at closing distance, at fighting from center, at being an effective counter puncher, at incorporating that movement, that speed on the feet as well, that striking defense as well. The odds might be a little bit steep, but I do think that Sumudaerji should pull this one out. Again, like I said, just one of those fights for me where the favorite in Sumudaerji just a higher level of striker than what Matt Schnell is, despite how solid I think Matt Schnell is. So Schnell should be game for this one, but Muderji again, just a level above, in my opinion. I think Sumudaerji gets the job done.
Yeah, Sumudaerji all day, man. Matt Schnell hasn't really beaten like whenever he refights strikers, good strikers, he kind of gets put away, right? Brandon Royval, Pantoja, Rob Font. Like these are Tim Elliott was able to look good in the stand up while the fight lasted. But the thing about Matt Schnell is he has an advantage here with the grappling. He could take this to the mat, get it done. But he's not going to do that. He's going to stand around and strike with Sumudaerji. Now, the only concern with Sumudaerji for me is he was away with the knee injury. And he's a guy that's kind of springy with his striking, in and out, good movement, very fast. And having knee surgery, I'm not sure how that's going to affect his style. But that's a serious, like in all sports, getting a knee surgery or getting a knee injury is could change you dramatically, right? So it's a tough fight in that sense that I'm not sure how he's going to come back from that injury. But if he's 75%, the old Sumudaerji, I think he gets it done here. Just keeps it on the feet. I think he has accurate striking, and I think you can put Schnell away. So I'm going to go Sumudaerji here to get the win here.
Fourth fight of our main card, we have Li Jingliang versus Muslim Salikhov. A good fight here as well. For Jingliang Li, he lost to Khamzat Chimaev. That was back in October. He's decent on the feet. A lot of fakes and feints. He tries to find his timing. Plays more of that counter puncher role. Essentially, he's going to try to lure you in for that counter. He can come in and engage with combinations too, though. He can definitely take a shot to land one type of approach. Also has a solid jab to go along with it. I wouldn't call him a KO artist necessarily, but you do have to respect the power that's coming from him. 8 of his 18 wins are via KO, TKO, and just 1.25 takedowns per fight at just under 40% accuracy. But with his ground game, he does have those sort of smothering wrestling attempts. He'll stay on you. Just 58% takedown defense, so he can be taken down. But again, offensively, he has the ability to take a few minutes of control time there. For Muslim Salikhov, it's been over a year since he last competed. He beat Francisco Trinaldo back in June. He's on a 5-fight win streak at this point. He's a Sanda, not Sambo, but Sanda, Sanda, world champion, which is basically a Chinese kickboxing / boxing type of martial art. So that tells you he's going to have good striking, right? Good boxing, of course, as a result, decent footwork. Probably not the fastest, but he is pretty light on his feet to stay at a range. The kicks are very solid too as a kickboxer. Good power. Of his 18 wins, 11 of them are via KO, TKO. I noticed especially good IQ in the stand-up. Doesn't really brawl, but he can engage if needed. And not really a takedown specialist, but he has landed 5 takedowns in 6 UFC fights. So potentially something that he could resort to. And I kind of feel that way about both guys here. Potentially something that they could resort to, although both of them might want to leave this fight standing. I think it's a good fight. I feel like Salikhov is maybe a bit more technically sound. I feel like both guys can be dangerous. Both guys are good counter punchers. But Salikhov's technique, I think, is going to work to his advantage particularly. I think this fight, like I said, I think it stays on the feet. And just to reiterate, I think Salikhov lands the cleaner shots throughout the fight. I think he's the better overall striker. And as a result, he's going to be my pick to get the job done here.
Yeah, this is a good fight. We got Li Jingliang. I think he can land a bomb. I think he can really put the pressure on Muslim Salikhov. I think Muslim Salikhov doesn't like fighting off the back foot. Jingliang is the type of fighter that could make him fight off the back foot. If he hits him, makes him respect the power. But we know this is going to be a striking fighter. I feel it. And I got to go with Muslim Salikhov, just kind of outpointing him to a decision win here. But again, Li Jingliang is live as far as landing that heavy shot. It's just that if he doesn't land that shot, he's going to be down the round, right? So Muslim's going to kind of just outpoint him. King of Kung Fu, that's his nickname, right? So I like the King of Kung Fu in this fight. Muslim Salikhov, unanimous decision. He might land. He might get a knockout.
Co-main event of the evening, we have Michelle Waterson versus Amanda Lemos. Michelle Waterson, it's been over a year since she last competed. She had a unanimous decision loss to Marina Rodriguez at that time. She, of course, has that karate style to her stand-up. She's pretty active, a lot of jabs from her, a lot of leg kicks, a bit more of a point fighter than anything else. She'll look for those clinch situations. Doesn't really have the best striking defense from what I've seen from her. So just look for her to kind of point fight karate style throughout the entire fight, really. Amanda Lemos, on the other hand, she did lose to Jessica Andrade back in April in her last fight. On the feet, though, she stays in the pocket. She looks to keep the distance close. The hands stay tight. She can march her opponents down a bit. She really likes to engage. She throws a lot of combinations in those moments, a lot of looping hooks. It's kind of borderline brawling style. She has that in her to do that. She's physically strong. We know that she's going to use that to her advantage in terms of potential wrestling and grappling situations. Just over a takedown per fight, just over 57% accuracy. So not a smothering wrestler by any means, but she is a BJJ black belt. So she is legitimately credentialed on the ground. And again, just doesn't just rely on sort of brute strength or touch of death power in terms of getting the job done. She does have a decent defensive guard. She has the ability to scramble, get back up if she is taken down. We see Michelle Waterson averages almost a takedown and a half per fight. I don't think she lands one in this one, but again, we know Lemos has that ability to get back up should that happen. Don't forget, in that Waterson versus Angela Hill fight, I thought at least Angela Hill probably had won that fight, even though Michelle Waterson got the split decision in that one. And I bring that up because ultimately, Michelle Waterson could be on a 4-fight losing streak right now. And I think Lemos, just in general, faster, more dangerous. She can capitalize on the lack of power, the lack of explosiveness, the lack of athleticism, and the lack of striking defense that's coming back on the side of Michelle Waterson. I kind of rewatched that Waterson versus Rodriguez fight. Waterson just looked like a whole level below in terms of just not being able to implement anything against Marina Rodriguez. Different style of fighter, but I kind of see Lemos taking advantage of some of those things that Michelle Waterson lacks. And again, like I mentioned, doesn't have any power coming back in her striking, doesn't really have that explosiveness or that athleticism to kind of catch Lemos off guard. And again, that striking defense is just not the best. I can really see Amanda Lemos hurting Michelle Waterson in this fight, despite how durable Michelle Waterson has been throughout her career. I can't recall if she's been knocked out in the 9 losses that she has. But Lemos might be the first to do it. That would not surprise me at all. If that doesn't happen, I can essentially just see Amanda Lemos winning a unanimous decision type of fight as the better overall striker, as these two fighters stay on the feet, or as the more dangerous overall striker, I should say, as this fight stays on the feet. So Amanda Lemos is going to be my pick. I think she's going to hurt Michelle Waterson. I don't think Michelle Waterson is going to hurt her. And I think it's going to be a long day for Michelle Waterson. Amanda Lemos is my pick.
Yeah, I seen the odds on this fight, and I thought there's some value on Michelle Waterson as a gambler goes, right? So Waterson can strike. She has good jiu-jitsu, good grappling, tricky takedowns. I'm thinking, why not, right? This girl can get it done. But when you really look into the fight here, it's 3 rounds. If it was 5 rounds, it would benefit Waterson more. It being 3 rounds, Amanda just has to win the first 2 rounds, and the physicality between the two fighters is going to be telling. Amanda Lemos is going to be the much stronger girl in there, much bigger girl in there. Michelle Waterson was a atomweight at one point. Obviously, the UFC doesn't have that division, so she moved up. But the size is going to show, the strength is going to show, the power, the striking power is going to show. I think Amanda gets it done here. Lemos gets it done. She's a big favorite for a reason, and I kind of understand why. But again, at these odds, it's not worth it. It's almost worth it to take a shot with Waterson. If she can keep it close, the judges might just give her the win. But I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos here to kind of dictate the fight with her strength. She's also going to have the wrestling advantage, and I think she's going to have the striking advantage as well. So Amanda Lemos is my pick.
All right, so let's move on to the main event of the evening. We have Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Brian Ortega lost to Alexander Volkanovski back in September. We know Ortega is a very improved striker, kind of since that Max Holloway fight. Very methodical striker at this point. He can switch stance as well. He has a good jab, especially as a southpaw. It has become he has become a decent technical striker to switch the ball. He has a strong calf kick. He has solid in and out movement, along with those fakes and feints, solid head movement as well. All that said, we know his specialty is his grappling. He is a high-level grappler, strong submission artist. 15 wins overall, 7 of them are via submission. Not a strong wrestler though. And those are probably the most frustrating type of fighters that have a specialty in the grappling, but just don't have the wrestling to go along with it. He lands less than a takedown per fight, though it is worth noting 7 takedowns landed in his last 3 fights, and those fights were against Max Holloway, Korean Zombie, and Alexander Volkanovski. So it could be something that he's actively working on, something to potentially take note of for this fight. Yair Rodriguez lost to Max Holloway back in November. Good movement, good diverse overall striking, very light on his feet. He has a sharp calf kick, really good kicks in general. He can effortlessly throw things like spinning kicks and things of that nature. So very easy for him to kind of switch it up on the feet. Very diverse offense because, again, the hands are also there as well. He has solid combinations as a result of that. That's unsurprising. Good distance control as well. He can also switch stance. So expect to see quite a bit of that for this fight. Yair is definitely the more dynamic striker of the two. But I would say after Brian Ortega's last few fights, I am confident in his ability in the stand-up. I think he held his own against Alexander Volkanovski for a while in that fight. And of course, we know that he completely outclassed Korean Zombie to the surprise of many at that time. Though Ortega is the better grappler, potentially, they're probably the same level of wrestler, which isn't that high. This fight for me is tough to call because it's hard to envision exactly how the fight is actually going to occur. These are 2 very tricky fighters. I can't quite see how the fight is going to happen ahead of time. Technically, I want to go with Yair for a 5-round fight that'll mostly stay on the feet. He is the higher level striker after all. My gut says that Ortega will find a way to pull it out. But honestly, I think as the higher level, more dynamic striker, kind of have to go against my gut on this one. This fight feels to me like Yair Rodriguez's fight to lose. I think Yair Rodriguez gets it done. I think he will be next up for a title shot. I'm looking at a fight that essentially stays on the feet. Ortega just doesn't have that wrestling gene in him to go for takedowns. And I think if he is going for takedowns, it's probably because he's hurt on the feet. So the way that I'm seeing it, Yair Rodriguez, you mention it all the time. MMA math doesn't always make sense, but again, we know Ortega's striking improved since the Max Holloway fight. But if you think about the discrepancy of striking in that Holloway fight between Brian Ortega and Max Holloway versus how much closer that striking looked in Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez, that should tell you the level of striker that Yair Rodriguez is compared to Brian Ortega. Again, I know Ortega has improved since that Holloway fight, but nonetheless, I think Yair Rodriguez, after coming off of a long hiatus for that Max Holloway fight, he reminded us of how high level of a striker that he was. And I think he's going to get the job done as a result versus Brian Ortega. So for the main event, I like the underdog, Yair Rodriguez. I think he gets the job done in a striking match.
Yeah, this is a good, I like this fight. It's about time. These guys, we got Yair Rodriguez, the better striker here. Brian Ortega, the better jiu-jitsu, better grappling. But let's go into the details here. Brian Ortega, as good as he is, he's a really good jiu-jitsu fighter. Like Harris, I'm not hating on the guy, but I know I might get some hate in the comments on this one, but like he's a good jiu-jitsu fighter. But let's be honest, man. Like this guy's it's a one-trick pony act. You know what I mean? Like we haven't really seen him in dominant jiu-jitsu positions. It's usually the choke. He doesn't take fights to the mat. Like maybe it's because he hangs around with the jiu-jitsu guys, the Gracie guys that train him. Royce Gracie's nephews, maybe. I'm not sure why he gets. Maybe it's that one that guillotine that he does. That people are just, he's one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters. But if you really look at his jiu-jitsu in the UFC, he hasn't really showed much to really deserve that. It's a pretty basic. It's kind of like what's that guy in the Ultimate Fighter? Cody McKenzie? The guy that he was a horrible fighter, but he had this crazy choke, and he made it far with doing this choke. And it's to me, it's a similar thing with Brian Ortega. I got to see more. I'm not saying he's not that high level jiu-jitsu. I'm not saying that he's not that really good on the ground. I'm just saying I need to see more before I say he's one of the best guys in the UFC with the jiu-jitsu. It's a one-trick pony act, right? So I think Yair Rodriguez can keep it on the feet. I think he can move around. I think he can keep it on the feet. I think he's going to be the quicker guy striking. And I think he could piece up Ortega. I really think he can piece him up in this fight. And if Ortega gets him down, Yair, I think he can survive it. Max Holloway got him to the ground. So you got to think that Ortega, if he's this high-level jiu-jitsu guy, he should be able to get him to the ground, but I don't think he can do that for 5 rounds, right? So if he doesn't get the finish, if he can't find this choke, I think that it's going to be a stand-up fight at that point. And I like Yair Rodriguez's chances in that aspect. And if it's close, I think the judges will give him the fight. New blood for Volkanovski. Volkanovski already beat Ortega. So the UFC is shady. The judging is shady. So they might want Yair to win. There's not many fighters from that region. So I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez. One of the only Mexican fighters that are really getting the job done right now, right? So I think the UFC really wants him to win, like as far as money goes, having that Mexican star. So I'm going to go Yair Rodriguez, pull off the upset here, keep it on the feet, avoid that choke. And then, like, if he gets submitted, if Yair gets submitted, I guarantee it's that choke. I'm not worried about anything else from Brian Ortega in this fight, other than that choke, the one-trick pony move, right? So I'm telling you, if my guy gets submitted in this fight, it's that choke. If he gets armbarred, if he gets heel hooked, I'm gonna come back and write in the comments, apologize, but I don't think he's gonna win unless he gets that choke. So I think Yair Rodriguez gets it done.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas at that point, and let's, of course, start with an underdog pick. I will read out the underdogs, or at least let you know who they are in which fight. So the underdogs are Jessica Penne versus Ducote, Dustin Stoltzfus versus Grant, Daun Jung versus Jacoby, Herbert Burns versus Algeo, Ricky Simón versus Jack Shore, Dalcha Lungiambula versus Soriano, Lauren Murphy versus Tate, Charles Jourdain versus Burgos, Matt Schnell versus Sumudaerji, Li Jingliang versus Muslim Salikhov, Michelle Waterson versus Lemos, and Yair Rodriguez versus Ortega.
Yeah, for me, it's either Daun Jung or Ricky Simón, but I'm gonna go with Ricky Simón as my underdog pick of the week.
All right, so Ricky Simón, we see him there on the plus side of a close odd match, plus 120. Of course, that could be slightly different depending on the betting line that you're using. In terms of my underdog pick, I'm going straight to the main event. Yair Rodriguez I think he's going to get the job done as the underdog, and again put himself in line for that title shot. And in terms of favorite picks or parlay, what fights are you looking at?
Man, you go first on this one. I gotta go through this, man.
All right. So I'll go first. So one fight I'm looking to add on for sure. I know standalone it's not quite worth it, but as a parlay piece to me, it is worth it, and that is Amanda Lemos. Another fight that I'm looking at, sort of for sure, is Sumudaerji. That's kind of the two that I'm really like. I want those for sure. Similar to last week, I want to get a third fight on there, and it's a little bit of a force, but I still feel pretty good about it. It's Dustin Jacoby. I know you liked Jung as a potential underdog to win, but I do feel pretty solid with my boy Dustin Jacoby here. So those three fights would be a 3.14. What that means is that $100 will return 314 in total, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 785 total. And again, that would be Dustin Jacoby, Sumudaerji, and Amanda Lemos.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Amanda Lemos, Sumudaerji, and I'm gonna roll with Muslim Salikhov.
All right, so those three fights: Sumudaerji, Muslim Salikhov, and Amanda Lemos, 2.86 on the payout. That means that $100 will get a $286 total return, and $250 for our bigger bettors will return a total of $715. So let's officially sign off on that note. This has been the UFC Fight Night, Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And again, most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Let us know how you feel about our parlays. Let us know how you feel about our underdog picks. Or, of course, if you want additional insights as to different fight props or different fight parlays that you are potentially considering, make sure you drop that in the comments as well. We're more than happy to have that conversation with you and share whatever insight that we can. But again, officially signing off at this point, UFC Fight Night, Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez, full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.